Peace and Black Power family. This is your brother Sutek Amin Ra. This is my son.
Your boy Radio God Stu. And we want to welcome y'all right back to another episode of the Like Father, Like Son podcast. You see the crew is here.
That's right.
Sutek, your boy Radio God Stu. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our previous content, our previous episodes, and also make sure you log on to KSPForever.com. All right?
Right.
Ready to get it? Ready to get into it?
We ain't playing no games with them, baby.
All right, let's get right into it then. All right, so Philadelphia Eagles receiver Deshaun Jackson recently made quotes on his Instagram talking about the white Jews and how they will blackmail America and extort America, but that will only be successful if the black people, the Negroes, don't know who they are. He attributed that quote to Hitler and went on to praise Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan. And white America had an issue with that. The Jews had an issue with that. So they came at Deshaun Jackson for, attributing it to Hitler. I think they were more so mad at him attributing it to Hitler than they were at what he was saying.
What the quote was. The Jews don't really care about all that. They just don't want anybody trying to celebrate
Hitler.
Adolf Hitler or give him any type of credence, credibility, or validity in anything. So
I mean, what the things that he was trying to accomplish and trying to do was based out of necessity for him to save his race of people because of supremacy that was going on in Germany from Jews.
Right. The Jews were at the time the oppressive force in Germany and in most of Europe. And in most of Europe, it's just that in Germany, the German people were doing very, very bad. And the Jews had their hand on all of that.
They were more affluent.
Right. And that's why Hitler was able to galvanize the people. Because when you see the newsreels and you see all the footage of Hitler coming out to his people.
Parades and rallies.
They loved him. It wasn't like they was throwing eggs and lettuce and tomatoes at that dude. They was loving him. They was Heil Hitler him, So, he was their savior.
Right.
Hitler was the Germans' people's savior. So, they tried to make him out to be this bad guy. He did some bad things.
Right.
To people, but in Germany he was revealed. He was revered. He was revered in Germany. So.
So how do you feel like that plays into the Negroes in America? So the Jews were able to come out of the Holocaust and all that stuff. After World War II. 100 years prior to that, we had fought the Civil War.
Right.
And black people were still being oppressed. We still had to deal with white supremacy that we're still dealing with to this day.
There's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of parallels to the Jewish community, the black community, and the struggles that we had to go through. There's definite parallels. The Jews were in Germany, oppressed, but the only difference is they knew how to run societies and economies. They had a firm grip on how to get into key positions in society and control them, monopolize them, so that
it works for their benefit.
It works to their benefit. And all roads to success had to go through them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there's certain parallels that we have to acknowledge. And
but the Negroes in America dealing with supremacy from white people, and honestly, I feel like Jews are a part of that supremacy that is oppressing black people.
Yeah, they're the unseen hand. That's the unseen hand. It's no secret that Jews think that they are separate and apart from the white race. They don't look at themselves as the ordinary white race people.
Right.
They use those people to pit against black people.
Right.
To keep all this contention and white supremacy and racism, going. You know, that's the system. In order for this system in this country to work, you have to have that.
Right.
You have to have that contention. You understand? So that you're not really looking at the unseen hand.
Right.
And
you're dealing with surface level white supremacy hatred,
Right.
when the real depths of it is way higher,
way higher than we can see
and
right now.
more detrimental to future generations than what we're seeing at surface level.
Right. Because remember how this country was formed, all right? In Europe, under the old system of monarch, you had monarchs. It was most of the civilizations in Germany, in England, Spain, Italy, and France. Those were the main players at that time. Belgium, you know, they were in there. Those were monarchs, meaning a ruling family. And that rule passed down from generation to generation to generation. And you had two classes, rich and poor. And there was no in between. So the poor eventually just get fed up and overthrow the monarchy. When they came to this country, they said, look, we can't recreate that same model because we'll go through that same scenario.
Right.
So we have to put in a buffer class, put a middle class in, so that the lower class can look up and see hope to get to the middle class. The middle class can see hope and look up to get to the upper class, right? But at the same time, it's going to be multicultural. We're going to have indigenous people that were already here. We're going to bring in white folks from England, Spain, Italy,
That are looking
France,
for political,
that
look for religious refuge and whatever it
all
was.
type of differences.
Right.
You understand? See, we look as black people, we look at white people as just being all white. But when we look at black people, we'll say, okay, he's Jamaican, he's Nigerian, he's from Ghana. You know, we see the differences, you know, nationality wise in black folks. But with white folks, we just look at them as all white. But white folks look at themselves as, I'm German,
I'm Irish,
I'm Italian, I'm French, I'm Spaniard, you know what I'm saying? So when they come here, that's multicultural to them.
Right.
You understand? We look at them as all white, one culture, but to them, they look at it as multicultural. That creates competing forces. You understand what I'm saying? And that works in the favor of the people at the top.
Right.
You understand? Who's pulling the strings. Because as long as I'm having competing forces down here on this lower level, I'm not looking up at the people up there who's pulling the strings. You know, so that's where racism, and there was race. See, like I said, we look at it as white people being all white, but there was racism amongst white folks.
Right.
You understand?
To this day, there's
still racism among white folks.
Right.
You know, in later years, in like the 1940s and 50s, you started to get more intermarrying of the different races. Like a lot of Irish were starting to marry with Italians. You know what I'm saying? And things like that. Then you have more immigrants coming in from other countries, but you had Italians fighting the Irish.
Right.
I mean, gangs in New York,
Chicago,
Chicago, all over the place. You know, different ethnic groups was fighting each other, but nobody called it white on white crime. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's only we only get that label. But you know, so there was racism amongst white folks. Now, white folks sort of more galvanized now and come together against black folks. You know, there's the butting of the heads with black people. That's the original contention. In later years, the Hispanic is coming in and playing a role. However, they're behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? the main conflict is with black and white.
Right.
You know, and that's one of the issues that's two of the main issues that black people face in this country is racism, and we had the discussion earlier, personal racism and institutional racism.
Right.
That personal racism, we akin it to be like more of a cousin to prejudice.
Twin brother
To prejudice. You know,
because you can be racist, but that deep-rooted racism comes from something, which is prejudice.
right,
So in order for you to be racist, you have to be prejudiced.
right,
But you can be prejudiced
and not be racist.
Right.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that. I agree
So,
with that. Like you can not like white folks.
Right.
Like we had the example of Sterling, who used to own the Clippers.
The Clippers.
And he's probably the same as all the other NBA owners, but he don't like black people. You know, and he was vocal about it, and that's what got him kicked out of the NBA.
Right.
But he hired blacks. He hired blacks to play for him. He hired blacks to coach his team. He hired blacks in other areas of his organization.
Right, but outside of that, all his business dealings were systematically racist
right.
towards black people as
Right,
well.
right.
You know what I mean?
So he could be prejudiced, but not racist.
But and you know, like how all the other owners in the NBA, they came out against him once it came out.
Right.
Right? But those same owners are prejudiced towards black people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like they would be prejudiced towards black people if they seen black people out, or if they were in a black neighborhood,
Right.
they would be prejudiced towards those same black people.
Right.
They may not be racist, but they're prejudiced.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
the distinction.
So that's that personal racism as opposed to the institutional racism.
Systematic
You know?
racism.
Right.
And the systematic and institutional racism is what we're trying to fight
Right.
today, right,
Right.
now. It's not, I mean, of course, the institutional and the systematic comes from personal racism.
Right.
But if we defeat systematic racism,
Right.
then I don't care what your personal feelings are.
Right.
Your thoughts are.
So that lower class and middle class Caucasian, he can be personally racist.
Personally racist all he wants.
But he can't be institutionally and systematically racist because that's where the element of power comes in.
Right.
You don't have the power to be a institutional and systematic racist.
Right.
He's just, a personal racist, prejudiced person. Boom. Right? So
But how do you feel like, with that racism, the role that white supremacy plays in that, and how do you think that us as black people need to deal with handling white supremacy moving forward?
Okay. To me, racism and white supremacy are two different issues. All right? Black people are the only ethnic group that complain about racism and institutional racism in this country. Black people are the only ethnic group in this country that protest against white supremacy. You don't see other ethnic groups coming to this country, protesting, making racism an issue or making white supremacy an issue in their attempt to be successful in this country. Only black people are doing that.
You don't see Chinese,
You don't
Japanese.
see Japanese. even the immigrants coming here from South
Arabs.
America, the Arabs, they're not doing that. They come here and they be about their business because they believe they have everything that they need to compete and to be successful in this country. Whereas black people, we don't believe that. And as we discussed before, I think that's because that's how we were trained. We weren't educated. We're trained, and that training is what has us believe in mentally that white people are supreme, that there is white supremacy. And it's that training that we get that makes us hesitant to compete against racism. You understand? Racism, the only reason black people complain and have issues with racism is because we totally depend on the racists. If we reduce our dependency on the racists, then racism wouldn't have that overriding impact on our lives. All right? And we complain, we protest against white supremacy because we're trained from little to believe that white people are better. You understand? There's the old story that, you know, you got a black person selling ice over here, and you got a white person selling ice over here, and the black person got nobody at his line, and the white man selling the ice got a line around the corner, and everybody say, and somebody come up and ask us, well, why are you in this line and not over there? And they say, well, the white guy's ice is colder. You know what I'm saying?
Ice is ice.
Ice is ice.
Yeah.
You know.
But I definitely feel like, you know, that mentality of white supremacy, all it is just a mentality.
It's a mentality.
It's just a mentality.
Yes.
You made the.
But that mentality cripples you. It's a crippling mentality that's implanted in your subconscious mind. It's not even conscious no more, because we could sit here and discuss white supremacy and say, oh, fuck all of that, boom, 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 boom. But subconsciously, we still react to the training that we got from when we started school and just in the house, listening to our parents say certain things. Oh, don't do that. That white man gonna do this. Or don't do this because the white man gonna do that. Growing up, police officers, authority, it's no secret that in kindergartens and first, second, third, fourth grade is white women. Are the teachers. You understand what I'm saying? So that we learn to accept that white authority. You know, everything we do is, all our training is to accept white authority. So that white supremacist attitude can be ingrained in us. You know?
I mean, and even today, you know, we like subconsciously we live through it. You know, like you made the comment about, you know, white ice versus black ice, you know, and I see it in my people all the time, especially in my younger generation. Like when they're you know, shopping at a black business, they feel like they're helping that black business or they're supporting that black business. But when, you know, it's a white business, it's like, I'm just going to the store or I'm going to get something to eat. So it feels like a duty when they support the black business, when they go to the black business for something, but it's just by default when they go to a white business. It's like the same exact thing.
If I go to a black store, I'm going above and beyond what I'm supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? Like
look at me.
Like it's a duty.
Look at me. This is what I'm doing. I'm supporting black.
But with other ethnic groups, that's just, you know, innate. You know. You know, if
you're looked at crazy if you go to another racial group for what you need.
Right. You go outside your culture, you go outside your race.
Like, can you imagine?
Hispanics is supporting Hispanics, Chinese is supporting Chinese. You know, black people, we support everybody but black people.
Right. You ever see a Chinese person getting fried rice at a soul food restaurant?
I never seen a Chinese person in a soul food restaurant getting anything. You know, and the thing is, right? And here's the kicker. Chinese people, they ain't selling them but fried rice and wings now. You know what I'm saying? Black people ain't buying none of that.
Or they set up soul food buffets that black people go to.
You know, there's a restaurant in Harlem. I think the woman got 3 stores. It's a Korean woman called Manners.
On Lenox.
They got one on Lenox. They got one on 125th. And they got one uptown. got one uptown. I think they still got one uptown. You know, she's selling soul food buffet
So food buffet
in Harlem
to black people.
to black folks.
And the line is deep.
Store stay packed. You know what I'm saying?
But that just goes back to the mentality of white supremacy that, you know,
is ingrained in us.
How entrenched it is
Right.
in our minds and how we need to break that. So how do you feel like, you know, we need to operate and deal that so we're not affected by the racism and we're not totally dependent on the racists?
First, let me say this, right? I'm not mad at the racists. I'm not mad at white folks for thinking they're supreme. You know,
They had to do that.
Right.
Like, okay, so like take it back a step back to slavery. I don't think white people were like, I'm going to bring slaves here because I'm racist.
Right.
It was
A
business
business
decision
Dig
that
it.
I had to bring them here. Now, once
Right.
they got here, I had to keep them in that, you know, in that inferior complex in them.
Right.
So I had to
control them.
had to mentally control them. So I'm gonna create a supreme image to them of
Right.
myself to control them.
That's why he gave them religion.
Right.
That was the role that religion played in slavery. Because what you have to understand is, on the plantation, you might have had 6 white folks and 100 black, 50 black, 30 black. You understand? White folks couldn't sleep at night. You understand? They couldn't go to sleep when you got 100 angry black people out there, less than 100 yards from where you sleeping. So they had to create a psychological
Right.
image in their mind so that they could rest,
Right.
so they could sleep, so that they could turn their back on them. You know,
If I control how you think, I ain't got to worry about what
I ain't
you
got to
gonna
worry
do.
about what you do. Exactly. And there's so many parallels to nature and our relationship with the Caucasian and our mindset in dealing in society. When you see how they train dogs, when you see how they train, they could go out and get an eagle and train that eagle, a hawk. They go out into the ocean and get what they call a killer whale, bring him back into captivity and train him to do tricks for you. You understand what I'm saying? It is no wonder
Right.
that they can systematically train another person, especially that first generation African that first came off the boat here. They were the ones who fought back.
Right.
It was the offspring, and then the offspring, and then the offspring. Boom. They had no knowledge of their history. They had no knowledge of what it was to be free. They had no knowledge of who they were. Now I could tell you who you are, and I could tell you how you're supposed to live, and I could tell you how you're supposed to behave. You understand? And then I could tell you who God is, and God looks like me. He don't look like you.
Right.
You understand? So now, you know, that thing is ingrained in us, that is ingrained in our DNA. And, you know, we have to go about the task of reversing that training. I tell people all the time, listen, whether you believe Willie Lynch was a real person or not, the process is real.
Right.
You understand? The process of the Willie Lynch letter is real. The process of the let's make a slave process is real. You understand? I did a lecture with my brother Sarnetta. Shout out to Sarnetta.
Shout out, Sa.
Shout out to my brother Black Dot, Urban X. You know, check him out, Urban X TV. I did a lecture with him a long time ago, man. One of me and his first YouTube videos, where I took historical documents and compared them to the Willie Lynch letter. You understand? What I'll do is I'll link it to on our webpage. so that people can see it, and I put it in the website. Link that video. I think it's still up. If not, I got the DVD. We could load it up. But it was just historical documents of the methods and the training regimen that they did to the slaves coincide exactly to what was going on in the Let's Make a Slave and the Willie Lynch letter. You know, so I tell people, look, man, if you want to see the correlation, just go to the Willie Lynch letter. Go to the Making of a Slave document.
There'll be some element.
There's full of elements. But the thing in the Let's Making of a Slave document that tells you how to come out of it is when the slave comes with new information. And the only way you come with that new information is through analysis of your current situation. And that's what we have to do here. We have to analyze our current situation. Right now, racism and white supremacy is being defined to us by the racists and the white supremacists.
Right.
All white folks aren't white supremacists.
Right.
All white folks aren't racist.
Right.
But all white folks benefit from white supremacy and racism.
And there's a fear of losing that.
There's a fear of losing that benefit.
Right.
That's what those Trump supporters.
Right.
You understand? Those poor Caucasians who feel that black people, Hispanics, and other immigrants are in their way of being successful.
And that's not true.
That's not true at all.
It's just themselves.
It's just themselves. Exactly. It's the system. You know, it's the system that they're ignorant of, just like black people are ignorant of. You know, in actuality, poor whites and poor blacks are in the same boat. And we just fighting over it in the same boat. You know, if we understood that an educated dollar beats white supremacy and racism every time, our situation would change overnight.
So, I mean, what do you mean by an educated dollar, though?
In a capitalist system, it's based on competition. You know, like I said earlier, the only reason black people complain about racism is because we depend on the racists. But the flip side of that is, in most cases, the racist depends on you. These businesses that have racist policies, they're selling a product. They're providing a service. You understand?
Right.
They depend on us to buy their products and to purchase their services. If we didn't buy their products and purchase their services, they wouldn't be making the money that they're making.
Right.
You understand? So we have to understand how capitalism works. If we understood how capitalism works, we would educate our dollars. We would be able to create institutions, and this is more of a conversation for part 2 of this.
Okay.
You know, what I want to tell people in our viewers is that a lot of our conversations, they're like stepping stones. You know what I'm saying? Then they're not here, there, all over the place. Like our conversation on the business of voting plays heavily into this conversation right here.
Right.
And this conversation right here is going to play heavily into the next conversation. And the next conversation is going to play heavily into the one after that. So we're taking you on a journey, like my son said earlier, you know, come along on this journey with us. You know, we're taking you on a journey that's taking us from where we are, understanding where we are today. You know, one of my pet peeves with the conscious community is we study history, but we're not connecting the dot from history to the future.
What's the solution?
What's the solution?
Get us to the
you know,
solution.
what is our image of the future that we're trying to make? You know, that's why every other ethnic group, that's why everybody else studies history, so that they can predict what's going to happen in the future and then make adjustments if it's going
According to plan.
according to plan or not. You understand what I'm saying?
Got you.
But we don't do that. We study history and then we argue about who has the biggest stake in history or not, or who knows more about this or who knows more about. No. We're going about it all wrong, and as a result, we're being able to be fooled into doing everything else all wrong because our fight and our strategy against white supremacy and racism is all wrong. We're being tricked into fighting a fight that we don't need to fight.
Right.
We're being tricked into trying to convince white folks not to be supreme. We're trying to convince white folks, look, don't protect what you have with a racist wall. That's all white folks is trying to do. Like I said earlier, I'm not mad at the racists for being racist. I'm mad at black people for not doing what we need to do to compete against it. You compete against racism.
Right.
You don't ask them to stop. You compete against it. That's what capitalism is about. And we have everything we need to compete. Francis Cross Welsing says that the Caucasian race fears genetic annihilation. So therefore, their racism and their theory of white supremacy is an attempt at them to adhere to the first law of nature, which is the survival of the species. He knows that through miscegenation, his race will be wiped out. That's what Hitler was about. Hitler was trying to save the white race. And he wanted to have pure Aryan stock, da 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 da. And we was having a discussion about eugenics the other day and Margaret Sanger and all of that. Hitler got all of that from here. He got that white race superiority shit from Margaret Sanger and the eugenics movement here. So, but sad to say, black people have lost that concept of survival of the species, survival of the fittest. Integration killed our responsibility at self-preservation. We have Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Durham, North Carolina. Like I said before, Kentucky had over 50 black towns. One step out of slavery, we was on the path to self-determination. Integration killed that. Integration killed that. And the integration movement wasn't an attempt to level the playing field for black people to be able to succeed in this country. It was an attempt to get control of the black dollar. Okay? In the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, there were over 400 black-owned and operated banks in this country. Imagine, today, blacks have $1 trillion buying power. Imagine $1 trillion buying power being controlled by black banks. You can't imagine that, can you? But guess what? Those economists in the 1930s and 40s, they could imagine that. And they made every attempt and step to make sure that that didn't happen. Because with $1 trillion buying power controlled by black banks, that makes us players in the international finance game. You understand?
Now you can buy property.
You can buy property. You can invest in businesses. You can invest back in your community. It's just so much that would have been able to be done with the black dollars going through black banks. Integration killed that. They didn't want to integrate with you living next to you and working next to you. They wanted to integrate your dollars with their dollars so that they control it. That's the whole kit and caboodle about the integration movement. You dig it? So, if we understood capitalism and how it works, we would be a lot further on, and we'd be able to see the traps of what's going on. All of this, listen, the marching that we're doing is one aspect. You dig? It's one aspect of us raising awareness to racism and white supremacy, the effects it's having on us. But the follow-up is on us. The follow-up isn't making white folks be less supreme or be less racist. The follow-up is on us to create institutions, businesses, and things like that so that we can compete. That's what the follow-up is. And that's what we'll be discussing in part 2, because when we first came on the scene, we said, look, we want our platform to be a solutions-based platform. We just don't want to talk about the issues and leave it hanging. So, in our next episode, we're going to, put out some solutions, because I feel Comedic Science of Prosperity, we have the most comprehensive plan for Black economic empowerment around. I think a lot of these cats, although their intentions may be good, some of them are just leading you down the path of feeding white supremacy. If you send your kids to public schools that don't have a African Black centered curriculum, you're just feeding white supremacy. You invest in your money in the stock market and white corporations, you're just feeding white supremacy. So, when you support these movies like we was talking about earlier, Black Panther and all of that,
I still haven't seen Black Panther.
You just feeding white supremacy. You ain't fighting it. You fighting it with words, but you feeding it with your dollars. You understand what I'm saying? You're feeding it with your children.
You're already trained.
You're already trained. And what we have to do is stop letting them train our children. That is our future. We have to make plans for the future. We have to have a vision of the future, and we have to manifest it. And we have to take responsibility.
So do you feel like us fighting racism and white supremacy, that fight is hand in hand? Like there's one solution that you use to fight both?
I don't think it's one solution to fight both, but the two issues go hand in hand. You know what I'm saying? With racism, we have to eliminate our dependency on the racists. Boom. The white supremacy, we got to get that out of our subconscious mind. You understand? Some of us are just too far gone. You know what I'm saying? Really, some of us are just too far gone. And those that hear us say you're too far gone, believe us.
Right.
And then come back and say, well, what do I need to do so that we don't perpetuate this thing?
Right.
There's one thing about being too far gone, and then there's another thing of perpetuating it. And we keep perpetuating it. We got relatives and family that believe in Jesus wholehearted.
White Jesus.
White Jesus, wholehearted. Or if they don't believe in white Jesus, they believe Jesus ain't had no color. You understand what I'm saying? That's feeding white supremacy. And then they bring their kids to church with them.
Right.
And then the cycle just repeats itself. We got some brothers out there. My brother Q Butter in Brooklyn with the Ziac Institute. We got the brother Mwalimu Barudi in Atlanta, Georgia with the Akabin Institute. We got the brother Marcus Klein. He's got schools in several different states. We got a brother in Dallas, Texas. I forget his name, man. But he's got schools in Dallas, Texas. That's the type of thing we have to build in order to fight. One of the things we got to do in order to fight white supremacy, because it's a mental thing. We can't send our kids in their most impressionable years to your oppressor to be educated. Only a fool would do that.
Because then we grow up learning that Hitler was such a bad person,
right,
which he was to some people, but we learned George Washington was
a founding father, and he was great. Yeah.
No, to me, he's just as bad as Hitler.
Just as bad as Hitler.
He's just as bad as Hitler. He oppressed the shit out of my people.
Right.
But we're supposed to celebrate his birthday, and I got to be reminded of him every time I spend $1 bill.
Right.
Of George Washington. So
right, and he's a slave owner.
Right.
He.
We could quote George Washington,
but we can't quote Hitler. Right.
Don't refer to Hitler.
Right.
But quote George Washington.
We could sit up here and you want us to sing a song, Star Spangled Banner, that was written by a slave-holding anti-abolitionist that believed in slavery. You want us to stand up and sing that song with our hand across our heart. And the second stanza of the song is talking about killing black people. That is the most crazy thing in the world to me, to see black people stand up there and sing the national anthem. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to take down Confederate monuments, if you're going to take down Confederate flags, you need to change that national anthem.
Right.
You understand? You need to change that national anthem. That's... Mm-hmm. Now, see, that's the type of thing that voting will get you. Put pressure on politicians to see the contradiction in taking down Confederate flags and monuments and still having this song as the national anthem. Right. That's a total contradiction, especially when the second verse talks about killing blacks. You know, for black people for them to hire black people to sing these songs, sing that song at these events, to me is the epitome of the Negro mentality.
But that also feeds into corporate racism.
Yeah.
And government, you know what I'm saying? And government policy and
right.
stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
How corporations play a role in essentially perpetuating racism.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's one thing to be patriotic. You know, I can be patriotic, but don't expect me to go against my common sense in being patriotic
or being. But it's not even patriotic. I think people misconstrue the meaning of patriotic and nationalist. I think people want you to be a nationalist before you be patriotic, and that's you can be patriotic and still hold your nation to the values in which it says it should be held to.
Right.
And just because you don't agree with what's going on in the nation doesn't make you any less patriotic.
Right. If you want the nation to be the best it can be.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right, man. Look, man. This is just part one. You know what I mean? We got a lot more stuff to discuss. Make sure that y'all log on to kspforever.com. Make sure y'all check out all the content on the Like Father, Like Son podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, share.
Tell them about the YouTube page, Like Father, Like Son podcast. We got a YouTube page out there. You know, go like that, because a lot of this stuff we're going to put on our YouTube page. We're going to, some stuff that we may not discuss here, some issues, some different videos or whatever, we're going to put on that page. So, go and like that page also, Like Father, Like Son podcast on YouTube. It's a group that we set up. Go out there, like that. This way, every time we post something, you'll be made aware.
Definitely be notified of all of the great content that we coming with. Hey, man, listen, your boy Radio God Stu, my motto, a father that can be proud of his son can also be proud of himself.
And this is your brother Sutek Amun-Ra, and my motto.
Tell him.
In order for the black man to live,
who got to die?
The Negro has got to die. Death to the Negro, baby.
Peace and love, family. Make sure y'all are down.